My family's always joked that I did not get the shopping gene. You might be wondering how that could possibly be genetic, but you haven't met my family. For them, it's a sport. I've been on countless shopping trips with my mom, grandma, and sisters. From malls to small boutiques, I'd seen it all. Or at least I thought I had. That was until I entered a consignment store jam-packed with clothing. On the walls and on racks, on mannequins and in bags that had yet to be sorted. I flipped through the racks, and then I looked down. And you'll never believe what I saw. Shoes. But not just any shoes. The coolest shoes I had ever seen. The sequins on the outside, flip sequins. They quickly became my favorite shoes that I owned. As I mentioned before, this store is a consignment store, which means it takes clothing gently worn by people and sells it secondhand. This is different than a thrift store, as the clothing is usually donated and the profit goes towards charity. I frequently return to this consignment store, and every time I find a new article of clothing I had never seen before. As I wore all of this clothing, my friends asked me where I got it, and I became more aware of the clothing they wore too. Some recognizable brands include Zara, Shein, Princess Polly, Urban Outfitters, Forever 21, and H&M. Most of which sell cheap and trendy clothing. All of which pump out new styles daily. All of which are fast fashion brands. Fast fashion isn't a new phenomenon. It's been happening for decades. But within the past 15 years, clothing production has doubled. Not only does this clothing go to landfills, where non-biodegradable fabrics sit for up to 200 years, but one cotton shirt can take up to 2,700 liters of water to make. That's the equivalent for the average person to drink for 2.5 years, or the equivalent to 30 bathtubs. About 85% of textile waste in the US goes to landfills, with one garbage truck of clothes burned or thrown to a landfill every second. That's enough clothing waste to fill the Empire State Building 1.5 times every day. The societal impacts are even more jarring. About 80% of the 75 million workers who make our clothing are young women my age. The primarily female workers of Bangladesh make only $96 a month, when they actually need 3.5 times that to sustain the basic necessities of life. So if fast fashion is so harmful, why do 88% of Americans still invest in it? It's cheap. If you've ever been on a fast fashion website, you've seen the enticing $12 bathing suits, $10 shirts, and $20 pants. It seems too good to be true, and it is. But to some extent, there is a psychological explanation for this desire of a deal. Everyone loves a good sale. A study from 2007 showed that when humans were shown a desirable item on sale, the pleasure center in their brain lit up in an fMRI. When shown the price, the medial prefrontal cortex debated the desire to have that item of clothing with the desire of the deal. Shopping isn't only enjoyable due to the desire of new clothing, but also the desire of a deal, which fast fashion exploits using cheap and trendy clothing. But is this cheap clothing really a deal? With cheaper clothes comes cheaper material and cheaper labor going into making that clothing. At the end of the season, the clothing will be worn and torn. So next season, you'll have to buy more. Or maybe you just want to buy more. Gotta keep up with those trends, which fast fashion feeds right into. Companies depend on the consumer's desire to keep up with the trends and purchase new items, fueling a focus on the short-lived fads that's directly correlated with an increase in clothing production and consumption. More clothing is being produced because more people are buying more clothing. The World Resources Institute reported that in 2014, compared to 2000, the average consumer bought 60% more clothes, but kept each article only half as long. These two reasons can certainly explain why we still invest in fast fashion, but only partially. Fashion is a symbol of wealth, and it has been since the royal families centuries ago. They kept the high fashion exclusive, so the wealthier members of society could differentiate themselves from the rest of society. Perhaps technology has eliminated this association of wealth and fashion by increasing the accessibility to clothing. Or perhaps it has only increased the accessibility to trends. Technology could never eliminate our culture of trends, nor could it remove our desire to fit in. In a society with accessibility to a variety of clothing, the wealthier individuals have a harder time differentiating themselves. So what happens? Speedy fashion trends. The only people who can afford to keep up, the wealthy, leaving everyone else scrambling to stay in the race. It would be wrong to draw conclusions about all wealthy people supporting fast fashion, as wealth inequality is a far more complex issue. And there's a variety of people who support fast fashion versus sustainable fashion, which is simply clothing made in an environmentally friendly process and out of environmentally friendly material. However, the median annual income of a sustainable fashion consumer is $18,753. Within the US, the primary consumer of fast fashion is in the middle income bracket, making about $68,703 a year in 2019. The logic of this makes sense. People with more disposable income can afford to waste it on clothing that will only be worn for a season, while people with lower incomes have to be more thoughtful about the quality of clothing they're purchasing. But sustainable fashion is for everyone, especially if we want to combat the societal and environmental impacts caused by fast fashion. So how do you find sustainable fashion? One way is to research the company. The information is out there on the internet, and there are websites that will summarize and rank a brand based on its sustainability. You can also check the tags. Many companies are moving towards using labels labeled with "made with recycled materials," or towards entire sustainable clothing lines, such as Urban Outfitters has done with Urban Renewal. There are a variety of sustainable tags you can look for. These are all examples of tags I found in my house. Some will describe the recycled materials used in that article of clothing, and others will direct you to a website in which you can read about that brand's efforts towards sustainability. The Patagonia and Lucky labels talk about other measures of sustainability taken, such as less carbon emissions or less water used to produce that article of clothing. The Fair World Project is a nonprofit organization advocating for fairness certification by reviewing factories and the production of clothing. There are many different looking fair trade tags, but they all have the same meaning: made in a fair work environment. Fair Trade USA only tracks the final factory in which that article of clothing is made, while Fair Trade International tracks the entire process, from spinning to sewing. It is even worth noting that it is not just clothing that can earn these labels. Anything manufactured has the opportunity to be produced in a fair trade environment, such as this Ben & Jerry's ice cream I found in my freezer. These tags would create transparency between the company and consumer, a goal even the government has invested in with the New York Fashion Act proposed in October of 2021. It would require large global fashion companies to map out their process of production, including where the greatest environmental and societal impacts are. This awareness is an essential starting point in encouraging shoppers to investigate the consequences of their shopping choices. The goal of the Act is to hold these brands accountable for their contribution to the climate crisis. B corporate certifications also consider a company's entire environmental and societal impact before granting its approval. The logo looks like a bee in a circle, like this tag has from a pair of athletic leggings I found in my house. Through various assessments, B Lab works towards creating a network of organizations all focused on valuing equity over profit and power. These tags all appear in new articles of clothing, but you don't always have to buy the new clothing. There is a decision in how we spend our money, and we can choose to spend it with companies whose values align with ours. You hold the power to make that change. And while it can take more time and research, it can also be more fun and fulfilling. There are thrift stores 15 minutes away from this auditorium, consignment stores 10 minutes away, and online thrift or consignment stores such as ThredUp, Depop, or Poshmark a few clicks away. You can upcycle your old clothing or hand it down to a sibling, friend, or community member. And if you just can't avoid these fast fashion brands, the least you could do is not throw it away after one season. Make a smart investment in clothing that will last for at least 3 years. And donate it when you want it out of your closet. These are all great solutions, but are they enough? If fast fashion is the result of the wealth divide in our society, then choosing to invest in sustainable fashion is not enough. We must address the wealth gap and the diminishing middle class only accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic. To bring about long-lasting change, we need to look at the crisis from another angle and address the root of the problem. As individuals, we can choose what fashion to invest in. As a society, we must choose to critically look at the societal problems damaging our Earth. Thank you.